Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here on this first session after lunch. Top prize for whoever can stay awake throughout the whole session after they've had their lunch. My name is Anthony Wright. I work for Quantum Metric, and I'm the head of solution engineering. What we do at Quantum Metric, and we'll probably get into this in a bit more detail, is we really focus on identifying and solving digital friction for our customers, and we really focus on creating seamless digital experiences. Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa. I also work at Quantum. And just so nobody makes the mistake, I am Canadian. I do live here. Thank you so much for coming and listening to our talk. Maybe you won't be the 40 minutes, but thank you for coming to sit with us. So I know everyone sat down. Maybe a few of you are on an app right now, but could everyone just stand up for a second or a minute?
There's not going to be any role play, don't worry.
Well, it was stand up if you have an app or you're planning to launch an app in the next 6 months, which I think should be everyone. Now, we want you to stay standing if you have goals to increase your conversion rate or to increase your digital self-serve. Anyone sit down? Oh, everyone wants to increase their conversion rate. So stay standing if you did not have any surprises when you launched your app or made some updates. No surprise. Yeah, come on. There's always a surprise. Oh. Not one. Okay. So everyone sat down. All right. So there's some surprise. The last question was stay standing if no one has ever made a complaint about your app, which I think if you go, everyone has something to say. I used to work at DHL, and some people would always say to me, I didn't get my package. I said, not what I do. But anyway, so what we are going to talk about, app, we all know it's important. That's why we're here. That's why you dedicate 40 hours or plus of your working week to mobile app. Interestingly, from a social psychology perspective, it actually, if you have an app downloaded on your phone, it actually increases the mental availability that it has. So it distorts how much focus you have on that brand. So if you've downloaded, let's say the M&S app, you actually start to think and only think of M&S above and beyond Sainsbury's and the rest of it. If anyone has read the very famous book, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kay, he talks about system 1 and system 2. So system 1 is automatic, it's fast, it's what you do. You're starting to fall, you put your hands out. System 2 is when you think about things. So I'm debating a holiday between, Bali and Brazil. So system 1, it actually starts to play into your system 1 thinking. It becomes more automatic. So that's why it's important. So that's like from a social perspective about how app actually does start to get into your psyche. From the more quantitative perspective, we have some stats from a few different studies, recent studies, but one we have, it might be a bit different for you. These might be a bit skewed towards the US, which is a little bit stronger in app. But 74% of digital traffic is on mobile and app today. It accounts for 55% of sales. And we have some differences just across the industry. And by next year, 2025 already, I'm sure we all had those 5-year 2025 goals, but there's going to be $362 billion spent in app, which is the same GDP as Hong Kong, Chile, or Romania. So about the size of a country. And you have a microphone. And
I do indeed.
Some more.
Yeah, so Lisa just talked about the traffic. We're trying to set the stakes really here for mobile app. At Quantum, we deal with digital experiences, which are often split between web and app, which is why we're kind of interested in differentiation of the mobile app. So it's not just about traffic, it's also about the behavior of people within a mobile app experience. 2 times higher usually. That's an average, I think, across the stats that I've got in here. It's different in different industries. Something like 320% higher in entertainment, 94% higher in retail, but it averages out around two times or 200% higher for conversion rates in native apps. Equally, when people are doing their retail shopping in a native app, 4 times as many products are viewed. You get so many more eyeballs on your individual products when you're viewing inside of a native app rather than a mobile web or a desktop view. And finally, the other opportunity or the stakes of the mobile app are that you've got a much better communication opportunities with your customers. We've got the average open rate of 20%. I think the average open rate for email is at 2.1% and clicks through at 1%. So they open at 2.1, clicks through at 1. For push notifications in mobile apps, we're opening at 28% and clicking through at 20%. So it just using a native app in front of your customers just gives you so much more opportunity to engage with your customers and so much more opportunity to make ultimately more revenue and more efficient conversion rate.
So each of you in your respective businesses probably have some, goals to increase conversions. We want to drive app adoption. We're throwing money at it, more paid spend. You're on your website. You have a big fat banner across the top. Download now and we give you 50% off. We'll send you a moose if you download the app and buy something in the first, 24 hours. So we want to get people to download the app. And you know what happens? They've got there. You've hooked them. You got them to download your app. But now, is it done? Is the job done? Maybe for, marketing to get them there, that they've reached their goals. But what about actually having them convert on the app? We have to make sure that experience is flawless on the first time because you may not get a second time, which is some interesting stats from other customers. So why is it so hard once we get them on app to deliver a good experience above and beyond, let's say, our web channel?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. So, above and beyond the web channel, there are a few idiosyncratic challenges for mobile app device development. The big ones here, we've got app visibility, data parity, and switching app and web together. And I point those three out together because I think you can lump them together. Because, I don't know, I'd be actually interested to hear from everybody. Who's got 100% native app that they work on all the time and doesn't have any web views and integrated into the app? Wow, we've got one person out of all, 1, 2. Okay, that's pretty good. You don't see that many that are 100% native apps. There are often historical elements of an app that leaks into a web view that's on a site. So if you're using tools to try and track users across their entire digital experience, you really need to be able to, and that's why we say stitching web and app together. You might start that journey on a native app screen, but then you may log in through a web view, then go back into the app. And indeed, you can move in and out of it a lot. So tying it together is a particular challenge. Developer backlog is a real issue for mobile app. I think, again, we work a lot with digital experiences that go across both of them. It's easier, generally, to get resources for web applications than it is to get for native applications. Getting somebody who's got expertise across all three, if you think of Android, iOS, and web app, can be super challenging. And then ultimately, if you're testing that app experience, it's a hell of a lot quicker and easier to do A/B testing and to release new features on a web application. You don't need to wait for anybody to download new versions. You don't need to push through a pre-production and a post-production environment necessarily. So there's all sorts of different challenges, technical challenges, to constantly iterating and improving a mobile app versus a non-mobile app.
Don't be such a geek, Ant. It's about the people, too. We got people problems, organizational problems. It's not just the tech itself. So what we have here is the hippo, an AI-generated image of the hippo concept. So the highest paid person in the room's opinion. So if you've ever had one of your leaders, managers, executives say to you, do this because I think this is the way we should go. So take, for example, if you've seen ASOS's app and you said, oh, they have a part on their home screen that says as seen on me. I think we should do that too. And I've actually been on an email thread with, they were a prospective customer at the time, where it was a Sunday and the CEO emailed the team and said, guys, we got a big problem. Someone's trying to buy 6 flights and they're not able to check out. Please let me know what's going on as soon as possible. And the keeners, you see them writing back. Some are writing back Sunday pretty quickly. Then some people are not so keen to work on their Sunday. So they said, Quantum, can you help us out with this? So actually, it was not a big problem. It was only happening to 0.001% of their visitors. So they then could say, actually, it wasn't a problem. But before that, they were looking around, oh no, our conversion rates are up, diving into GA data, diving into other sets of data, and couldn't see why there would be a big problem. So what we're really talking about doing is, yes, there's a tech problem in monitoring, challenges in monitoring your app. There's also the organizational context and how fast you can move and getting a alignment across the teams when you have data silos and opinions. So what we'd like to do is give you what you need in the data to make knowledgeable and informed decisions that are actually going to move the needle and make a difference. So I'm going to just have this time, you don't have to stand up again, but just a show of hands on who has on iOS an app score of more than 4.5. Okay, good. Yeah, a few. And on Android, a score of more than 4.5? 2, less. 3. I mean, I'm an Android user, so it's always a bit more painful for app. Everyone would like an app score of more than 4.5. But as we said, there's some innate challenges in that. So we're going to give you a few secrets, the 3 secrets to mobile app success. The first one is knowing the size and scale of those opportunities. So you definitely don't want to spend your high value resource on items that are only impacting a few people. And that's what we say first, is knowing the size and scale of that. This is just an example to give people hope that didn't raise their hand over a 4.5 app score. Firstly, of course, you're not alone. But when we started to work with Korean Air on their app, their score was 2.9. And so with the quantum data that we were giving them, first off, you had the organizational context. You were getting people aligned with the data to make decisions quickly and assembling the right squads, but then equipped with the right data to say, okay, this is the thing we need to look at because it's impacting this amount of people. Just as one example, so they kept iterating as they were going down those opportunities. And in one case, they had a payment error that they noticed it was impacting 2% of their visitors, and that was 1,000 visitors in a space of 7 days. So if you extrapolate that over the year, it actually becomes a pretty big problem, which is some things that people don't understand. Oh, it's not happening to a lot of people. But in this case, across the year, it would be 50,000 across the year. So that was actually going to mean quite a bit of money when you have those drop-offs in the funnel. A fair bit of millions of dollars of lost revenue. So with the quantum data, they were able to dig into this, prioritize that issue because it was blocking conversion, and eventually, at the end of the year, increase their app score in a short time. So that is an example, and now I pass to you.
Yeah, so Lisa's talked about the use case and started with the end really with the score, but I want to talk a little bit about the technology and the process that went through actually getting that information. But before I do that, I just want to say this I was very proud of. I'm a bit addicted to kind of AI generated images. And I said to Lisa, it's great because you can have an idealized version of yourself. And she looked at me with a completely deadpan face and asked me if I was the hippo, which I thought was a bit mean, but there we go. So we talked about how we got to the end. How do we actually do that process? Well, the first piece is understanding the size and scale of opportunities. Every app has got lots of opportunities. There's lots of friction everywhere. It's unlikely you're going to have a lot of huge blockers, but you are going to have lots of small death by 1,000 cuts. Or if you want to be a little bit more positive and think of the old kind of the amalgamation of marginal gains from British Cycling. There are lots and lots of opportunities to take incremental improvements to your app, but what you want to do is focus on the ones that are going to have the biggest impact. And the way that we were able to do that with Korean Air is to essentially create what we call a list of opportunities and to quantify those opportunities. So there's quite a lot on this slide here, but essentially we've picked a particular process that we want to focus on. That's not working. There we go. Up here, we got our checkout funnel, and we got our 2 or 3 different metrics that actually lead to the success of that overall checkout funnel. So we're within the context of that one particular flow. We're able to identify all of the errors or all of the events or all of the errors and events, custom events and out-of-the-box events that take place in the app and what impact that's actually having on your overall, in this instance, because it's a checkout funnel, on your overall conversion rate. So if I focus down here, these are the list of the errors that we've got. So we've got 404 errors where pages aren't appearing. We've got a rage click, which is being caused by somebody mashing on a particular element. We've got an error with a promo code. We've got another rage click, and then slow API calls that are happening in the background. And what we're able to do when you prioritize those according to the number of users that are affected and what impact that's having on that overall completion or conversion rate, depending on what kind of funnel you're looking at, is you're able to then apply an annual opportunity. And so if I open up kind of the DNA of that funnel, we can define funnels, and you need to be able to be flexible to define your funnels, not just by the pages that people go through or the view controllers or the activities that people go through, but also by the events that people take place. And you need to be able to support kind of single page applications as well, and break down the individual stages of your funnel and try and identify where exactly we're seeing that friction. And that's what we're seeing in this view here. And it shows us that it's, they're getting through to the shipping page, no problem, and they get to the payment page, and that's where the error has been identified. And because we're able to capture real cart values when we're building this funnel, we're able to say what the actual annual opportunity value is. And that helps us make data-driven decisions rather than intuition-driven decisions. And that really takes care of the hippo problem, as Lisa laid out originally. So that's all about choosing your opportunities and making sure you're taking the opportunities that give the biggest impact. Second pillar or secret to mobile ad success is about monitoring the experience from every angle. And I've kind of touched on that a little bit because within the funnel that we showed earlier, I talked about some of the different events and errors that are being collected. But you really need to not just look at qualitative data, you need to look at quantitative data, and you also need to be able to, and this is a phrase that I only learned this morning when I was in one of these sessions, somebody referred to it as dog fooding, which is just, you eating your own dog food, you learning and taking note of your own experiences in your own app. And that's ultimately what you can do with some of the quantum tools. So if we look at the example that we've got in here, the use case is for US Bank. They identified a small rage tap anomaly on the submit button for a mobile deposit. So it was a journey that someone was trying to take, or lots of customers were trying to take. He actually quantified it as 75% of the users were being affected. They identified the very small rage click on a submit button, but it looked like it was a technical error. It looked like it because the error came up on the page as a technical error, but in fact, it wasn't really a technical error. It was really just a form validation error that was being identified as a technical error. And the way to solve it was to just add more messaging. And the way that we were able to identify that was to go through a kind of automated root cause analysis process. So just like we saw earlier with the opportunities view, this is a view of a journey, but focused in the context of a checkout experience. And it's got some predefined metrics at the top here. So we're keeping an eye on those really important metrics like conversion rate, checkout sessions, and so on. And we're able to, the US Bank were able to identify very quickly that they saw a drop in their conversion rate. They were able to quantify what that drop in the conversion rate was and when it took place. Very quickly go to the next stage and identify where in the funnel, much like we saw earlier in the opportunities. To identify where in the funnel they were having that issue, and then come down to the individual errors that we have collected during this experience. And that means ultimately when you define what the error is that is potentially having the biggest impact, we're able to then drill into the actual experience. And so this is where it comes to dog fooding as well. You want to see, even if you've had the experience, being able to go back and double check exactly what happened in that replay, and also crucially being able to see all of the events, all of the errors, all of the attributes that are captured during that session within the mobile app is crucial in terms of identifying that root cause and then giving you the ability to pivot from looking at one individual view like this of the actual session and then saying, well, actually, I've identified one issue across the mobile experience, but where am I seeing all of those issues across all of my customers? And that's exactly what US Bank did. They saw the issue, they saw how it was affecting their conversion rate. They looked at it at an individual level, and then they hit, I think if we can see it on here, we've got the ability to look at more errors like this, which then takes you up to where that error occurred across all experiences within the platform. And once we've done that, that data can then be shared with the developers, ultimately look at the root cause analysis, resolve the issue. The issue on hand, this isn't the actual replay, obviously, because this is from our demo environment, but the real replay was that there was a agree to our conditions button that was off screen, and it wasn't being shown as a button for asking for a final permission. It was just coming up as a technical error. So we were able to dig into that by looking at all of the custom events and errors for
my
that particular
favorite
replay.
use cases around this. I liken myself to Sherlock sometimes. I like to get to the bottom of things. So I love when we can catch people being sneaky and doing fraud. So we actually have customers that if they, for example, purchase a mobile insurance policy, within the last 30 days, we flag up if someone's made a claim, like in that 30 days of buying their insurance policy, and they can go in and they can unencrypt this and can see if people are being sketchy and how they're writing things and how they're describing stuff. And then the other thing is on fraud, if people keep putting in their different credit cards over and over and over again. So we've actually plugged quite a few gaps on the fraud thing, and that's always satisfying, because we just work in tech, but I mean, I'm like catching criminals, right? So those are my favorite use cases when it comes to this. Thanks,
Lisa. Okay, so I mentioned right at the beginning in terms of iterating on an app, we've talked about the 3 pillars, or we're in the middle of talking about the 3 pillars, but when you're working on each one of those ways, there are a number of different kind of techniques that you need to keep in mind. And one of them is to be iterating constantly, always. And another is to listen to lots of feedback. And we've talked a bit about quantitative feedback already. Quantitative feedback, because we're looking at metrics and looking at how metrics changed. We also need to get back qualitative feedback. Now that's going to come from I don't know, you've got feedback forms, and whether you're also going to get your executive escalations, which, although the Hippo problem is indeed a problem, there is still some validity to having individuals with influence work on their intuition and take their previous experiences and use that. So you don't want to eliminate it entirely. You do want to listen to that quantitative feedback. But I always say in my previous life, I worked a lot with CX data, and CX data is great. It's really good to get feedback, but it is a self-selecting vocal minority that give feedback. And it's really quite, you can't always get a full view as well. People don't always remember what actually happened. They remember how an experience made them feel, but they don't really remember the detail of what actually happened. So what we built...
the British person says self-selecting minority. I called it the Karens, but
we discussed that.
that.
We weren't going to say that in case
the
people
Karens
want
to speak to the manager and be heard.
That's quite right. And so you only get that self-selecting negative minority. But what we built and leveraged in our platform here is when we have this built-up replay. What we got in here, I think it's a 2.5 minute replay. You can imagine we've got thousands of replays that you want to get through, but you haven't got 2.5 minutes times 1,000 to listen to them. So we have a tool that we call Felix AI, which is this little fox thing up here. And what that does is essentially goes through automatically the whole of the replay and summarizes that replay. And this can be transformative in allowing you to listen to an awful lot more qualitative data on top of the quantitative data, because it means that you don't have to watch the whole replay. You can actually see from the summary the important elements and the important outcome of what actually happened in this particular transaction. And that really supercharges your ability to listen to lots and lots of qual data. Okay. The final...
It's like reading those reviews on Amazon. You know how Amazon's added the summary of all of the reviews? And I'm like, oh, this is perfect. So that's kind of what we have with our application of Gen AI.
Absolutely. The final pillar, or the final way to make sure we have this smooth mobile app experience, is about leveraging or building experiences that are unique to mobile users. So I've talked a lot about how we switch from a digital experience to a native experience. One of the great benefits of a native experience, as I'm sure you're all very aware, is that you get a lot more data about the user, and there's a lot more information that you can leverage to actually have a much more interactive and maybe efficient experience when it comes through driving people through a particular journey. So the example that we've got in here is a customer we have called Tropical Smoothie Cafe, where they have an app, and they had a third-party app for a long time, and they wanted to transition into building their own native app, and they wanted to make sure that they made their data-driven decisions and solved some of the problems that they had for their third-party app. So we were able to work with them in a pre-production environment before they went live to ultimately hit the ground running. But when we did launch initially with them, they did see that they had a particular problem with people ordering from cafes that were the wrong cafe, geographically speaking. They thought they'd ordered from the most local cafe, but they actually were ordering from a slightly different one. And it meant that it led to quite a big number of drop-offs. People who had ordered something then realized how far away that the cafe was that they tried to order from, and they were canceling that order. And really the way that we try to resolve that, or the way that everyone should be trying to resolve that, is about being empathetic about the journey that the customer is going through, putting yourself in the shoes of the customer, identifying what they were trying to do, and trying to identify where that drop-off was taking place. Now, you would see this metric in a number of different tools. You would have seen it in some of the other approaches that we had earlier, but we weren't really able to see why it was happening. We could see that drop-off was people were canceling, but we couldn't really work out why they were canceling. And it was when we were able to dig into that data a little bit using another tool in the quantum metric tool bag of our journey mapping here. So what we're able to do is, again, we've talked a lot. I've talked already about a very specifically defined funnel. A funnel that we know where they start, we know how they go through all the different pages or activities, and we know what the outcome is going to be around a conversion rate. But of course, that's great if all your customers always go the same route that you want them to go. They don't always do that. So what you need to be able to do is be flexible and map an application, whether that's a native app or indeed a web app, through the pages that people are actually going on. And then you can map the real journeys that people are taking. And that's what we start to see here. There's no limit to the number of steps that people will take, but once you can map the actual journey that they're going through, and you can focus on the actual drop-offs on the search page, and then once you've identified that cohort of customer that are coming from lots of different places, and they're ending up on this search results page, and then we drill down into what are the key events and what are the key errors that are happening to that particular cohort of customer. And you'll see right here, this is where we identified the issue. Oh dear, my angles are all wrong here, I think. Doesn't seem to like the way I'm pointing that. There we go. It's that product return event that we were seeing. When we identified that particular cohort of users, and we were able to see what is the top event that is driving that experience, it's that product return event. So we were able to see that it was dropping out at that stage in the customer journey. And by resolving that issue, and the way that we did resolve that issue, or the way that the customer, I should say, resolved that issue, was simply by making sure that there was a map they had a map already, because you want to leverage that map within a native app, but we made sure that the app was on the same page as the search results view, so that they were actually able to overlay physical geography on top of their decision for the actual cafe. And in the time that we helped them deploy that change, we saw a 70% reduction in drop-off and a corresponding increase in their app rating up to 4.9.
Because let's be honest, if you've gone to the gym and you're feeling the burn, you need to get that protein in you within 30 minutes. So it needs to be from a close by cafe.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think that's it for the three things. We've been through the three elements, the three pillars, or takeaways, secrets, whatever you want to say. We want to monitor the app experience from every angle, and that means being flexible and understanding all of the different events and errors and attributes that are being collected and are being experienced in your customer journey. we understand how to size and scale the opportunities. There are lots and lots of opportunities and frictions in everyone's digital experiences, but you really want to focus on the ones that matter most, the ones that are going to have the biggest impact on the metrics that you're interested in. And finally, you want to leverage within your mobile app the unique elements that make native apps much more interesting to customers. And we talked a lot about why native apps are much more impactful, and people do a lot more with their native apps, and their behavior is a lot more engaged in native apps at the beginning. So you really want to leverage those individual capabilities for a native device. With that, I think that's everything that I wanted to say.